Today on The Perspective with Mike Sherbino and Julie Stautland, as we officially begin the exciting 64th season of the CFL playoffs, two very special guests on The Perspective, Steve and Georgie Kearns, dedicate their lives to helping people in the rough and rugged world of sports. They work with athletes in action in the pro division with the Hamilton Ticats and spent 21 years with the Argos. They also work with the Power to Change. Steve and Georgie met at Liberty University and were recruited by hockey great Paul Henderson and joined Athletes in Action. Since the two work one-on-one and in all kinds of group settings, they're also marriage counselors. Before joining Athletes in Action, Steve played 6 years in the CFL with the Hamilton Ticats and the BC Lions. All these years later, together, with God, they found their way back to the Hamilton Ticats, and they never looked back.
Well, welcome to The Perspective. I'm Julie Stautland, and it's always a pleasure to be with Mike Sherbino. So listen, Mike.
I'm glad you said that.
I have to ask you, so what's your football career like?
Well, I had aspirations.
You did?
Back in the day, I'm going to date my age in grade 13. I was hoping to be the starting quarterback, but I got nailed with an injury right in at the beginning of the season, and so those hopes were dashed. But in my mind, I accomplished amazing things. That's right.
Well, that's
But not as amazing as our guests today. You know, we've got Steve and Georgie Kearns with us.
Yes, we do.
I want to welcome them today to the program. Excited for the conversation. Thanks for joining us today.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure, yeah. Thank you for having us.
And currently, right now, you are with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, both as co-chaplains. So how exciting is that?
It's very exciting. It's been a tough couple of years with what's going on. So it is, it's good to be back, kind of back in the full role that we had before COVID. And so, beginning of a season, we've struggled a little bit, but we got the next game. So that's what you got to do. Go play the next game and do the best we can.
Yeah, we have a great coaching staff, so we know we'll do well.
You know, I was looking at your history, and one of the first hires here at The Perspective was a young woman who met her future husband at Liberty University. And that's where you guys met. So just take us back and tell us a little bit of your story. And both of you share. Fight for airtime.
Fight for airtime. I'll start by saying, Mike, that I remember grade 13 as well. And actually, I go back as far as grade 14. So we won't go into that part of the history, but I'll let Georgie talk a little bit about. So anyway, I'd never heard of Liberty University before until my dad I watched on TV back in the day of the bus ministry. So I was working at church on the bus ministry, and he would watch the show and say, "Oh yeah, they're looking for athletes and stuff." So anyway, I did apply and got provided the way to go, and went to Liberty, and Georgie can tell you the rest, but that's where I found her.
Yeah. And Steve was in Canada. His dad's was his pastor in Scarborough, and I was in Philadelphia. And we would watch the Old Time Gospel Hour and learned about Liberty. So I attended Liberty University to become an elementary teacher. So that first year there, I remember I was on a date actually with a baseball player. I went to a football game, and I remember seeing this football player pacing up and down the sidelines. And I remember my first thought was, wow, he has great posture. Weird kid. And he drank a lot of Gatorade or water. I remember that about Steve. And then I would see him around campus, and he was a very proud Canadian. He had a red backpack with a big Canadian flag on it. So that was my first memories of seeing Steve Kearns on Liberty campus. And that was back in the days, we were right before the mountain. In the middle, they're now built on a beautiful mountain. We were at a summer camp on an island. That was our dorms.
Treasure Island.
Yeah.
I found my treasure there.
So we and it was wonderful. It was fantastic memories. Liberty was one of our best 5 years ever. Yeah. And we worked on our masters there as well.
Well, any more of the story, and I think we'll have to give the rights to Hallmark, but let me ask you a question. You guys now, if we jump ahead all these years, you're chaplain like you're co-pastors together, and you've worked with different teams and currently with the Ticats. What surprises you most about pro athletes and their spiritual needs?
Well, at this point, nothing really surprises us. I think, they're just normal people. And so they have the same issues as the rest of us do. So, except maybe it's just more
Public.
more public. They're living their life in the public eye, and so sometimes the pressures, are greater in a sense. And but in reality, they have the same issues as the rest of us.
There's an old saying, I climbed the ladder of success, and when I reached the top, I realized it was leaning against the wrong building. And I think we've both come to that conclusion. It's kind of like I've arrived mentally. They're university graduates. I've arrived in so many ways. Lots of friends, plenty of money. What is missing in my life? There's something missing. Yeah.
We've heard recently about the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell saying he never saw a worse toxic culture than the Washington Commanders. Does this happen a lot in big money, big ego sports world?
Yeah, it can, for sure. And I think anywhere where you have, power, you have money, you have, public exposure and whatnot, it's just seen more. You can have a toxic environment in your, garage somewhere, and nobody knows about the mechanics that are doing whatever and upset at each other and whatever. You don't know about that, right? So again, I think it's the public thing that's what you always hear, but it goes on. I'm sure it goes on everywhere.
I think money influences as
sure.
well,
Yeah.
because we have worked with baseball, basketball, soccer, football. And it seems like the more money involved, the more pressure, perhaps more toxic, perhaps the players and their wives are used more. That's what's sweet about the CFL. There isn't a lot of money involved. So in my opinion, it's not very toxic. We have a wonderful situation, a lot of Christian coaches, a lot of good people involved. So it's been a very positive experience for us. But we have seen a lot of hurt people, through the years.
So in the course of a day or in the course of a week, it might be a better way of attacking the issue. How do you folks speak life-giving principles from God's word into the players that address those things? Because it's not just the players, it can be anybody. There is always power, sex, and money, and those seems to be the things that can either destroy us, or if we learn to handle it, well, then we can survive through life. So how do you speak into those issues? And do you do one-on-one? Do you do group sessions? What's it like?
Yeah, we do all of that. We do, we have we call it a chapel program, but it's, so we do a pregame chapel for the players. In football, we do it separately. So we'll do the visiting team at their hotel, and then for the home team, the Tiger Cats, we do it at the stadium. But actually, just during the week, then we'll have another time where we'll have more. It's more Bible study, so that's more of an interaction. The chapel time is, I kind of see it more like church and small group kind of thing. So the chapel is usually before the game. They're focused a little bit more. There's not a lot of interaction. It's more like just a devotional, and but the Bible study, then you can have more interaction. But then, there's a lot of just one-on-one conversations, building relationships. Football, fortunately, in the CFL, we have full access, so we can be in the locker room at practice. So we can interact with players, which is the best way. Some of the other sports, we don't have that, so it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Share with us, do you have a particular memory of where you really felt like, God really used me in this moment and in this place for these athletes and for their spouses?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think because we have been in ministry for at least 35 years, it's really fun because we have seen when we first joined ministry, right after Steve finished playing football, these were our peers. These were our friends.
Right.
And through the years, we have actually seen some of the children of people coming back to play. And they call us and say, hey, keep an eye on my son. Make sure he's okay. So I think I have seen amazing stories. I have seen so many cool stories of things coming full circle. I remember one time a person's lifestyle wasn't real great. And I remember the girls in the Bible study being concerned, and I was like, you know what? We're not the Holy Spirit. Let the Holy Spirit work on this couple. Now they're our age. They're a Christian couple. Their kids have been raised in a Christian home, and it's like, that's my God.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
It's so wonderful to see it come full circle and see the fruit. Well, listen, stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. We have to take a short break.
God was using people to reach me at the lowest point in my life and giving me father figures and big brothers in the faith to pour into me. And they just discipled me. They taught me how to memorize scripture. They taught me how to share my testimony. They taught me how to read the Bible. And the more that I learned it, the more that I was getting the word in me, I started to become stronger. And I started to find my identity in Christ. And it got to the point where I didn't even care about playing football no more. I just wanted to tell people about this life-changing experience that I received because I've never felt anything like this in my life before.
We're here today with Steve and Georgie Kearns, who are the co-chaplains of the, I almost said the Toronto Ticats, but you've been with the Argonauts, but it's the Hamilton Ticats. I confess, it wasn't a slip. I could have caught myself, but I think you work with so many teams. So just talk about that for a moment. How did you work back and forth? I remember one day doing a chaplain myself, doing a chapel service for the, the Blue Jays and the Minnesota Twins. And I was in a fog because I was happy with the Jays, but then I had to go and pray with the Twins, and I didn't really want them to win. But how did you handle it for so many years?
Well, I just see them as people, really. They play a game, and especially nowadays they're moving around from team to team, and so. But you develop a relationship with some of those guys when they when they're the visiting team, and it's so yeah. I don't really see them with jerseys on. I just see them as people, and that's really that's what they are, right? They wear a jersey, they play a game, but they're just people that need Jesus.
And because we've been in the Canadian Football League for so long, we want the league to survive. We want the league to do an amazing job. We want great. If I was a player's wife, when I was a player's wife, I wanted it to be a blowout. I wanted us to win by 100. Now we just want a great game. And of course we cheer for the Ticats. But back in those days, we loved those Argo players. We had unbelievable amount of Christian players on the Argos. So our memories with the Argos were amazing. And we do miss those people. And we're still in contact with them. Yeah,
that's very cool.
I was just thinking about the Argos. One of our youth from years ago, he was in the Argos, so I even know somebody personally. But I want to say, what is your most favorite part of coaching for Christ, as you said on Karen and Pinball Clemens' show recently?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, favorite. Wow, that's hard.
I'm sure there are many memories, many thoughts, but is there something that stands out? What do you love the most?
Oh, interacting with the players.
Yeah.
That would definitely be, and especially if you get just a chance to, sit in a corner somewhere one-on-one and, talk through some issue, when a guy said, hey, can we talk? And so, I had that about a week ago. One of the, actually a guy that used to play in Toronto, so I knew him from then, but he's our strength conditioning coach, and we just sat down and said, hey Steve, I need you. So I said, okay. So we sat down, and actually it wasn't a real spiritual issue, it was some other issue, but that's what I enjoyed the most. Yeah, just the interaction with the people themselves.
Yeah, I remember coming out of I think one of my favorite things is finding favor. Let God going, wow. Look, we have Bible studies sometimes in the head coaches' houses. Like we have found so much favor. A lot of the head coaches and the coaches he played football with. So that really helps. But I remember coming out of one of the head coaches' houses, getting in my car and thinking, this is why I was born. This is why I was born. The Bible study was so amazing. The conversations. And the people are going to like a level 5 of conversation, whereas North Americans, we are lucky if we get past level 2 of, oh, what about the weather? What about the economy? What about COVID? This is level 5 conversations, and that they feel free to share their hearts. And Steve is so private, and I am, well, people sharing even thoughts of suicide, that they were like, we've never said that to anybody before. And just God working through those situations. So it's definitely the relationship with people. Absolutely. We don't even remember scores when Steve played, but we remember the people that he played with.
I got a question for you guys. So you build a relationship with these people, and suddenly they get the word that they're traded. And it's exciting. That can be all sorts of things for the family. It can be uprooting. What happens in those situations, and how have you been able to minister to players and their wives?
Well, we were there a couple of times, at least once. As far as the trade goes. So you might ask Georgie how that happened, but it was, it's hard because I think it's, I know in my case it was like I went to the stadium and found out I was traded from BC to Hamilton, and I was home in 2 hours, and was on a plane the next morning to Hamilton, and so Georgie had a lot to do and wrap up stuff, and so it can be hard on the family in that sense. For the player, I think sometimes it's a shock, sometimes it's not, and they have a feeling that something's going on. And so you can either look at it like, oh man, they don't want me, or you can go, hey, this team wants me, so I'm going to go there, and maybe this is a new horizon for me, and might be just what I needed. So, but it is hard. So you just kind of talk through those, their feelings, their emotions, and what could be good about it, and if you have any, hey, just look at it.
Tell us about your involvement with Athletes in Action. How long have you been doing that?
My first interaction actually was in grade 14 when some guys came to our high school. So that was back in 1976 was my first exposure. And then when I started playing in 1980, I got involved as with chapels and Bible studies and whatnot. And this would be, I guess somebody asked me the other day, how many years is this for you in the role we're now? And this will be the 37th season, if you count the one, the 2020 that was lost. 37th season involved with the CFL and with Athletes in Action.
Paul Henderson, the hockey player.
Yes.
And Gord Barwell, he played for Winnipeg. He was one of our first AIA. They were praying and they asked us to come on staff with them. So we were one of the first staff members right behind Paul Henderson and Gord Barwell.
That's exciting. I mean, we've had Paul on the program and Noah's story, and Gord's got an amazing story as well, just like you folks do. So just as we wrap things up, we're all in need of hope. We're all in need of direction. And if you were giving the final minute to your team, in a chapel, what would you say to them today? What would you say to our viewers as a word of encouragement?
I think, Georgie just reminded me when at Gord Barwell's funeral, he was speaking somewhere and they had a film clip of him, and he was going through the end of Romans chapter 8 about nothing can separate us, from the love of God, and, trials and tribulations and all those kinds of things. And his final statement was, wouldn't it be nice to be convinced? To be convinced that I had nothing that I go through, whether it be the injuries, whether it be, trials in life, whether it be losing family members or whatever that is, nothing, God still loves us. And it would really be nice to be convinced, because sometimes when things happen, we're not always convinced.
Yeah.
And so that would be one thing for sure.
My verse for the season this year is Romans also, and it's, may the God of hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust in him. And we've come through such a tough season. Even I struggle as you trust in him, trusting God and being filled with that joy and peace, because our hope is in him. So that's my theme for this year with my own children and with the team or the girls that I'm working with, the ladies.
Oh, that is great. Well, listen, our time is up, but that is a powerful way to finish. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the work you're doing, and keep on going. I know you're going to, maybe you'll have grandchildren you'll have to oversee.
That would be wonderful.
Maybe so.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for your time.
All right, have a great day.
Can you explain what the Undefeated Spirit and what that's all about? Because you know a little bit about being undefeated.
Well, Undefeated Spirit was an avenue that came up with a foundation I work with primarily in the States, but somewhat up here. And if somebody wanted to go to the website, you go to undefeatedspirit.com. And the purpose was I kind of garnered that from the avenue of the Galatians of being a solid believer and following the three things that are very important to me: my relationship with the Lord, my relationship with people, and my relationship within myself. And have people understand that the Undefeated Spirit is about just not quitting. Doesn't matter what happens, you still keep on and go on another day.
We've had a few people from Athletes in Action, and I really appreciate all the dedication that these people have in investing into players and making sure that they don't get lost in the fame and lost in the game, and that they actually have a chance to make a foundation in their own lives. And I think it's wonderful what Steve and Georgie have been doing and how long they've been doing it.
Well, as you share that, I was actually looking at the clip just before we started talking again with Chuck Ely, and all of a sudden that brings back a memory. And I was just a young kid then, okay? Let me emphasize young. And but those names come back, and yet people who made a difference in their day. And I see this with, Georgie and Steve. They just keep pouring themselves in, and every day you're writing a new narrative.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, earlier this week, we had Rachel Barabo, and I love her hashtag, I'm changing the narrative. And every day we have that opportunity to change the narrative. And I see these people, they're becoming like grandparents.
I know, right?
But how cool is that? You want to sit down with somebody that you know you can trust, because life it can be overwhelming.
You're right.
So listen, as we go through life, and we talk about this a lot, let me just say this to each of you today. In a moment, I'm going to come back and teach a couple principles from God's Word that I can believe can be transforming in your life. And yet I can say that, but if that is not something that you absorb and take in and practice, what good is it going to be? It was like Georgie talking about that young lady that had walked away and then realized, hey, this lifestyle's not working for me. If something's not working for you right now, why not just pause and say, God, are you saying something to me? Is there something I need to change? Is there something I need to do different? As we talk to people who play professional sports, maybe it doesn't connect for you, but for me, there's a part of me that says, oh, wow, I just want to hear the stories. There is a part of me that sometimes would like to almost live vicariously through them. Some of the things I'd hoped to accomplish, but then I couldn't accomplish. But isn't that like life in general? There are many things that we've been striving for, and suddenly it's taken away. How do we handle those things? How do we cope? Maybe you've had a dream and it's been snatched out of the sky like a balloon that just gets blown away or suddenly burst. Or maybe it's been a phone call from the doctor, or perhaps it's been an unexpected knock on the door that has changed everything. How you and I choose to go through life is critical. What we leave behind is critical. That's why I love the story and the example of Steve and Georgie Kearns. Ben Patterson has written in a book called The Grand Essentials. I'm going to read something to you. And he says, I have a theory about old age. I believe that when life has whittled us down to the bare essentials, when joints and skin have wrinkled all our capillaries and they've clogged and hardened, what is left of us is what we've been all along in our senescence. He said, Exhibit A is a distant uncle. All his life, he spent his time doing nothing but find new ways to get rich. And in his senescence, very comfortably drooling and babbling about the money he had made. When life had whittled him down to the raw essence of life, all that was left was raw greed. And this is what he cultivated 1,000 times over in his lifetime. He said, Exhibit B is my wife's grandmother. When she died in her mid-80s, I love this part of the story, she already had been senile for several years. What did this lady talk about? The best example I can think of is when we asked her to pray before dinner. She would reach out and hold the hands of those sitting beside her. A broad smile would spread across her face. Her dim eyes would fill with tears as she looked up to heaven, and her chin would quaver as she poured out her love to Jesus. That was Edna in a nutshell. She loved Jesus and she loved people. She couldn't remember our names, but she couldn't help her hands from patting us lovingly whenever we got near her. When life whittled her down to her essence, all there was left was love. Love for God and love for people. The Apostle Paul wrote it a little differently when he talked about his purpose. He said, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Paul writes, he says that life for him is found in doing the Father's will. And even if it leads to death, and that is to his advantage, as he will be with the Lord. He would also then go on to write in Philippians 1, verse 27, and he says to the church, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. How important that is. You see, the reason I read this verse is that it reminds me over and over again that the way I conduct myself is going to have repercussions in my life. I have to make choices. Some time ago, I read about a guy named Ralph Milton. And one morning, he woke up at 5 o'clock to a noise that sounded like someone repairing boilers on his roof. In his pajamas, he went outside to find a woodpecker on the TV antenna and pounding his brains out on the metal pole. And getting so angry, he picked up a rock and threw it. The rock sailed over the house, and he heard the distant crash of it hitting a windshield. In utter disgust, Ralph took a vicious kick at a clod of dirt, only to remember he was in his feet. And as I smile at all that, how we choose to live, how we choose to go through life is so critical. Why not choose to say, Christ, I want to live with you and through you for your glory.